Board of County Commissioners now back in session. Next on the agenda will be Ms. Marsha Johnson, Clerk of the Court.
Good morning, Commissioners. You all have my report. Item number 1 for action is I need board approval of a contract renewal between the State Department of Revenue and the county, which provides for state-approved payments to the county for service of process in child support cases. This is something we have renewed the last several years, but to explain, when the state files proceedings in child support cases, our Sheriff's Department may be required to serve papers on individuals involved with those cases, and where they normally get a fee for serving papers, on these kind of cases, they don't get reimbursed for that. So with the contract, the county can get reimbursed at a rate of 66%, which helps offset some of the cost of that service being done. We don't generate very many funds on it, but it is something. And the current contract was approved for 1 year in 2018, and this contract renewal period would run for 1 year from July of 2019 until June 30th of 2020. And Attorney Schuler has received a copy for review.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Math. Any more discussion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, my computer has been down so far this week. I was not able to actually read the email, and I've explained to the clerk yesterday that I would review that. And if there's any questions that I have, I'll come back to the board. I don't really think so. I mean, we're getting money from the state. I'm sure we're going to say yes, and please and thank you, but just to make sure. So just for the record, thank you for that.
So, your approval, your motion could be contingent upon the attorney's
I'll
approval.
amend my motion contingent on attorney's review.
Amend the second.
Yeah.
Motion and second been amended. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay. And item number 2 is my office is gonna soon start preparing the letters requiring the constitutional officers, your department heads, and all the other agencies you fund to turn their budgets in. So are there any special instructions you wish to be included in those letters this year?
Pledge of the board.
Mr. Chairman. Ms. Marsha, just curious, do you have a budget instruction manual that the departments have as a guide to prepare their request?
We don't have a manual. Erin actually has forms that they are sent that they have to complete. I'll let her talk about it in just a minute if she'd like to.
I think we tell them like we always keep it
Yeah,
like.
each year I actually prepare the budget forms, and when I go through it, I actually compile 5 years of history for every single department, and also the constitutional officers based on their prior budget forms that they turn in. So they actually have a historical trend by category of what their expenses are. And then our office is there as well for support, and any questions that they may have. You know, we'll go over their insurance numbers with them. You know, pretty much we look at the trend for different items and anything extraordinary that may be coming up. So we do offer a lot of guidance to the departments, you know, if they need assistance.
I was just impressed by hearing many times our department heads saying that certain equipment failed, dysfunctional, had to be replaced. And I'm wondering if we have some systematic way of predicting the lifespan of equipment so that we can proactively begin to budget in the future for replacements of equipment, and should we be thinking about it that way?
Yes, and actually in the past several budget cycles, we've actually got payment funds set aside in the different department budgets. So once one piece of equipment is paid off, then they are able to replace another, because probably 5 to 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. So, you know, whenever a large piece of equipment would break down, it was a large increase to the budget, whereas now we've tried to keep it, you know, relatively stable.
And so we have a signal relative to the paying off of the equipment.
Correct.
Should we concurrently be thinking about the lifetime of that equipment? We pay off and then we have money to buy another one, but maybe we don't need to. We've maintained it well, or we are right ahead of the issue and have bought the new piece before that fails.
I don't think we've had payment funds available for long enough for that to happen.
I see.
Yeah, but we will, this year, we can get the department heads to actually summarize the age of their equipment. You know, that may be something that we could include as part of each request.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that, just as you said, each line item budget seems to have certain adequate information to justify the requested amount. And what would that be? And could we ask our department heads to justify why they're saying things like that?
Oh, yes, yes,
Okay.
definitely. And that's something that, you know, as they present their budgets, you all can ask any question that you'd like.
Mhm.
You know, as far as, you know, what items are paid for out of each line item, and they will know.
It'll be hard for them to keep up with them tractors and stuff, cause sometimes they use them more. I mean, some
Yeah,
years
Mr.
they,
Chairman's right. Some years, I mean, it just depends on some of the demands upon the departments on some years. Some years they use the excavator more than other years. So that's sometimes hard to figure out the life expectancy because it just depends on how much it's used. And I wanted to say one thing. In years past, and I forget when we stopped this, Commissioner Bolt, but in years past, a previous road superintendent had thought it would be beneficial, and the commission agreed to lease equipment. So we were in the process of leasing equipment, and then you know, we were getting new equipment all the time, but you know, then ultimately we decided we were losing money on that lease because then you'd buy it back. The leaseholder would buy it back at a great discount, turn around and sell it. And so we stopped that practice. So we've been going back and forth whether we should own a piece of equipment for its entire life or whether we should lease it for, you know, a 5-year period and then sell it back and get another piece of equipment. So we've gone back and forth, and I think the current superintendent, and I think it's borne out that it's better to get your full miles out of that piece of equipment and buy it and own it and use it for your entire life. So that's what we're doing now. But I would say 10 years ago we were leasing equipment, and now we're purchasing. So that's one reason it's not a continuous history, because we've switched methodologies for how we obtain equipment.
And I think we've come a long way working, our department heads working more closely with Aaron on the budget when they see things happening instead of waiting. So, you know, I think Aaron's talking to them more now about the needs.
I'm gonna make a motion that we request all county officers' constitutions to maintain their current budget as submitted last year without any increases. That is basically, in my opinion, due to the storm and the slow rate of reimbursement from FEMA. There's a whole lot of issues that we're gonna face this year that we didn't have last year, such as trying to put back your $1 million contingency fund, which the government's only gonna give, FEMA's only gonna give you 75% of that money back. So the other 25%'s gotta come from somewhere. So we got a lot of issues facing us this year moving into the budget cycle, and trying to maintain where we're at without increasing the tax rate on the taxpayer. So I'm gonna make a motion that we ask all the departments and constitutions to maintain their current budget.
Is that including the non-governmental funding?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Second.
got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. Any more discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I have something.
Go ahead.
Aaron, is it possible, especially for our road department and our sanitation department, that we could develop, along with kind of like, and this, I've had a discussion with Mr. Morone several times, we're going along with what Commissioner Bolt is saying, that we can get some kind of 5-year plan drawn up for this, we definitely need to replace within 5 years? So so the board kind of knows way ahead of time instead of just as stuff's coming up and,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea,
Okay.
actually, to do some sort of formal capital improvement plan for
Right.
each department. You know,
Right.
what is the expected life, the expectancy of this truck, you know, when will we
Right.
need to replace it? Yeah,
Yes.
that would be a good thing to do.
I think that'd give us better insight on discussions we have during the budget process as well.
So you wanna wait and do that when each department
can.
head come in, or?
Yeah,
you
that'd be
wanna
fine.
do-
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
However y'all, whatever y'all think best.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Okay. Any more, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, that pass unanimous.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's all I had, unless someone had a question for me on anything else.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next on the agenda be Mr. Allen Pierce, Door Coordinator report.
Okay, good morning. Commissioners. Quite a few items going on this morning. Some will take some discussion. So our first item is provide the board with a statement created after the April 24th meeting with the senior DEM staff and FEMA personnel of the future Alligator Drive. So you got that. We had a meeting, and then I sent, the day after that, I sent a statement out to everybody, including residents of Alligator Point. So I'm not going to read that statement again, but I'll just summarize it here for you. The short story is we are building the road back. This is Alligator Drive. We're building the road back in its current location because of the uncertainty when we will get a new right-of-way acquired. Two factors really drove us to this. One, FEMA will not reimburse the county for any continuing damages done to the temporary road, and they won't pay to put asphalt on it to protect it. FEMA came back there to their restriction on making a temporary road look and act as a permanent road. Two, FDEP said that if we can build a new permanent road by April 2020, then we can build it under their emergency order, which waives certain permitting requirements. Since the county road department would be at risk for trying to maintain the temporary road in a location we know is vulnerable while we sought a new right-of-way, and we are getting a green light to rebuild without all the permitting requirements, and we don't know when we will ever get all the land necessary to move the road, we are rebuilding the road in its current location using the design we started after Hermine. We are seeking to modify this design to provide additional protection on the north shoulder. And Clay Kennedy and MRD, in consultation with others, are trying to provide the best protection in a very limited space. FDEP would not allow the county to move the road south, so we're basically building the road up against the northern right-of-way. In order to facilitate the construction, the county might need to seek temporary construction easements from some of the property owners in the construction zone. This is something that I haven't fully fleshed out, but I just want to put that out there. You know, this might be an issue. On Friday, May 3rd, Clay Kennedy and I attended a meeting in Tallahassee with senior FDEP staff and current and FCMC to discuss the permitting requirements to build the road back in its current location. FDEP provided the necessary guidance for Clay and I to understand the various documents they need and the various exceptions available to us under the emergency order. At this time, Clay and I believe the county will be able to open bids for permanent reconstruction of the road at the June 18th meeting with the intent of awarding a bid at a July meeting. Such a schedule would provide the contract with 10 months to construct a road and sheet pile revetment, all the while maintaining traffic flow. However, as far as I'm concerned, rebuilding the road in its current location is not the end of what needs to be done. If the road is going to go back to a location we know has risk, additional protective measures should be taken. If I had to recommend something now, it would be beach renourishment with an MSBU assessment on property owners for maintenance. But there might be other ideas coming from our consultants. So I'm not asking you to take any action on that last item, but that's, you know, I just want to continue to hammer away that something else needs to be done, because you can't design a road to protect it, that's going to maintain itself or every hurricane status if the ocean is right at the base of the road all the time. It's just, you cannot design it. That's a built-in failure. So something else has got to put out there to stop those waves. So unless the commissioners have any comments about this, this is the direction that we've been given by the state of Florida, by DEM, by DEP, and by FEMA, and so the road is going back in its essentially current location with as much protection as we can get.
How far that water is on the road now?
How far is the water from the road now?
3 feet?
10, 15 feet on high tide. I mean,
Average.
it's right there.
Yeah,
10 to 15?
sure, average. And yeah, I just want to say, with all the work that's been done and all the conversations we've had about this road, we are now doing the very best we can at this time with the rules and regulations, and the money is now here, committed with FEMA if you'll do it the way they say.
Well, we hope so. We don't have a PW yet, so that's still in the design phase. But
Yes.
yes, we hope to get the approval fairly quickly for this process to go forward. Clay Kennedy, he's right here now, but he's going to go out there and do a new survey. I mean, we are trying to get, you know, accurate values and volumes of material needed so we can get an accurate bid, you know.
Can I add one thing?
Yes,
Clay
sir.
Kennedy with Dewberry. One thing that's not mentioned in there is the core permits. We're still, you know, I've got to call into Dave Apple, but we haven't gotten back with him. So there's still the Army Corps component there that's unclear as what their process is. We're hoping that it's going to be as painless as FDP is making it now, but that's still an unknown that's out there for this time.
Appreciate that, yeah.
And we had the Corps with us back in December, maybe in January. They didn't seem adverse at all to the process.
No, but they, you know, there's
They
just
may
these
surprise.
requirements that just, you know, the people just don't realize have not been waived. I mean, you know.
How far, can I ask a
Yes, sir.
question, I guess, like like you saying, building it back, same place, just an accident, it's gonna be over and over, it's gonna be the same thing when something happen. Okay, if beach renourishment were to be done, how far that would push it back?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends how much sand, how much money we have to pump sand in there. And I don't have the measurement in front of me, and I don't think Clay remembers either. But, I mean, it was gonna be a beach, 100 feet wide, as I recall. It was gonna be enough to make a difference.
I'm 100 feet deep.
100 feet deep, yeah,
Seaward.
seaward. So you'd be pushing the water back 100 feet, 50 to 100 feet. I mean, I really hesitate, because I don't have it's been several years, but it was not gonna be just a thin string of sand.
That'll
How
help
far?
7 or 8 years.
Well, yes, in fact, as a matter of fact, the normal maintenance was every 8 years, you had to put sand back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it'd go from that area right there.
That's why maintenance is critical, and I've had this discussion with each one of you all. There's no point in building a beach if you're not gonna maintain it, because it will wash away.
How far down?
Well, the standard sort of assessment is you build a beach, and every 8 years you have to replace it, because every 8 years, half of it is washed away.
No, I'm talking about how far you got to go.
Well, it depends. It really depends, Commissioner. This is open for public debate. I mean, if you're just doing beach renourishment to protect the road, calling it road protection, then it was gonna be about a mile-long beach. It would be centered where the old KOA is, and about a half mile either way. If in fact the community embraces this, then we could go back, and I'm not proposing this, you could go back to the original design of doing a much larger beach renourishment, including wrapping around on Ball Point. I mean, it's really up to the amount of money available. I will tell you the cost of construction has gone up dramatically. Gulf County had a shock, and that we're going to experience the same thing. When they did a beach renourishment program just last year, the cost was a third higher, 30% higher than what they'd estimated, and they had to dramatically reshift things. And I will tell you that 2 years ago, we had an estimate of $8 million for a mile-long beach renourishment. I suspect that will be a $10 million project now. I mean, I just expect the costs are going to be significantly higher. And it's just a matter how much, where the funding source is going to come from. If we do beach renourishment and DEP has funds available, we could qualify for a 50% match. The other 50% would have to come from your store funds, unless there's another funding source. At this point, and I'm getting ahead of myself, at this point, DEP did not receive any particular Hurricane Michael funds. So we learned that in the meeting. They didn't get anything. Now, there's money available in other places, but none in DEP. That doesn't mean they didn't get beach renourishment money funded as they normally do, but there wasn't any additional allocation that they talked about at the meeting.
Okay. Well, we'll.
Just one more thing, and I'm directing it to Clay as well. Just as I know you're thinking about this, as we see the issues of having to build the road back right where it is, thinking how important it is to double harden everything you do in your specifications. I dream of 1 inch rebar everywhere and sheet piling going down deeper than normal specs, and we have riprap as approved, and we really brag about that as how solid and best we can possibly do for this day and age in that road.
Commissioner Bolt, do you want to talk about any temporary protective actions on the road itself?
I understand that we have monies available to put a hard surface on that road now temporarily relative to putting an asphalt top coating on that road and stop the constant wear and tear of the dirt that's on the road and the lime rock, and give us something that's temporarily sustainable over the long period of time while we're waiting to actually formally rebuild the road.
So I'll say, I
So-
called Commissioner Bone, I just want to see if you want me to talk about it.
Sure,
I will.
please, would you?
All right, so this is a situation that came up last week. Mr. Emery Mayfield of M Construction had approached me, and Mr. Mayfield is the individual who helped the county move the rocks out of the way and open up the road as is that we have down there now. He owns the marina down there. He has a vested interest in trying to get the road open and functional because, as he said, and I hope I'm not taking something out of context, he said he's losing business because the road isn't substantially strong enough and wide enough for boats and trailers to get down to the marina. So he called me last week to ask me what could be done to widen the road and make it a better road for his use as well as the public's use. And I said, Mr. Mayfield, you've been an honest man. You have tried hard to assist the county, and you put your equipment down there. And while are trying to reimburse you through FEMA, you did it at your expense, and we appreciate that. So I said, give me a number, give me a price. I said, this is, and as I said, FEMA's not gonna reimburse us, but this is improvements in a road, and if the board so authorized, Commissioner Bull could use some of his gas tax money, his share of his gas tax money, dedicate to his district to make some improvements down there, and they would be temporary. And the improvements that Mr. Mayfield would do would be, he would widen the road out, so it would be 2-lane traffic. He would then get an asphalt surface on there of about 1 inch thick, the minimum necessary he felt was necessary to maintain traffic, and the cost was between $30,000 and $35,000. And by doing that, we would then get rid of the traffic light, and we'd have a paved road that admittedly is gonna be a temporary use. But it's something that I've talked to Aaron about, and that amount of cash is available in the road paving out of his district's funds. I've talked to Clay about it. He doesn't see a big issue from a new contractor, you know, that maybe the asphalt surface would have a function for the new contractor when he's working on the road. Maybe it wouldn't, but we have had a lot of complaints, and anyway, so that the price is $30,000 to $35,000, and I'm telling you all now, this is not a bid out project. This is something that we would do as an emergency based upon the need to get it done now. But that's the price Mr. Mayfield gave me. And so if the commissioner's interested, and we have a motion to that effect, then we would find a final conclusion with Mr. Mayfield about, is that the best way, and maybe include Clay on that. Maybe there's some options in Mr. Mayfield's work, but the goal would be to create a 2-lane road down there with an inch of asphalt surface, and get the public back moving faster and more smoothly than they currently are now. The benefit to the county is we would have less maintenance down there.
Let's get it down the road.
Pledge of the board.
Oh, yeah, say the $4,500 a month, but hopefully FEMA's gonna reimburse the traffic light, but just get the traffic flowing, get our grader from having to try to maintain that road always.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
You can.
Alan, would we as a board need to actually vote on the commissioner spending money of his gas tax money on that road?
Well,
Or just vote on the emergency part of it?
No, I would say both, because.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because your current paving project has been, it's concluded, so you don't have an active paving project at this
Right.
time, so, in order for funds to be spent, it's really the motion.
Okay.
Well, since they gonna be mobile, and if what I'm saying gonna knock them from getting that, forget it. But since they gonna be mobile and we won't have to pay no mobile price, let everybody spend $35 now, if you got it. And they did.
Right, there's a total of about $1 million in the road paving, in the gas tax fund. That's not enough to start a road paving program, Commissioner. You really want more than that, considering the price of asphalt. But I say this is a necessary improvement to the district down there at Alligator Point. Admittedly, the asphalt may only, well, we might have a hurricane in a month and wash it all out, and it's a risk the county's taking, admittedly, but it's,
No, what I was saying, like if somebody had a bad road that needed some work done in their district.
well, it's certainly something that I will tell you, if we do it this path, oftentimes, Commissioner, we're not getting the best price because, you know, it's a small thing, and there's always a mobilization cost. And in this case, you know, 2 years ago, when we looked at the cost of asphalt, we had, the county, with Preble Rish, it was about a $20,000 cost 2 years ago. So the cost that M Construction is offering now is essentially $20,000 for asphalt and $15,000 worth of labor widening the road out. So I think he's giving us a very fair price.
Okay.
I really do.
All right. Well, I don't wanna do nothing to knock that. I want y'all to go ahead, cause y'all need the road down there.
But if there's, Mr. Chairman, I see where you're headed. If there's an emergency in other districts and there's something has to be done, there is road paving money to do it. It just is a risk that whatever you spend now won't be available when you do a road paving program.
Okay. Pledge of the board.
I think it is-
I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner.
Second.
Mr. Burke, second by Commissioner Massey. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Thank you, Commissioners, appreciate it.
And then we'll get work on that. Thank you. All right, the second item is board action to approve a grants manual that has been reviewed by the County Finance Office and approved by the U.S. Treasury to keep us compliant with Treasury rules when we start back up with the restore funds. And you all, here it is here in all its paper glory. You've gotten maybe some versions of it or some parts of it, but this is the document that we will start using to administer grants throughout the county. And
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Okay, item number 3. Inform the board I participated in a FEMA site visit at Island View Park yesterday, Monday, May 6th. At this time, we are waiting for FEMA, At this time, we are waiting for FEMA to calculate the damages in its own way. Excuse me. But Wood Partners has provided the county with its estimate of rebuilding the park at $1.8 million. During the site visit, and this is something I didn't have in your version report, I discussed with FEMA the possibility of redesigning some of the park to reduce future damage and maintenance costs. Specifically, we talked about replacing a lot of the concrete that was undermined with a boardwalk. And we discussed redoing the parking lot to make it more durable. Instead of having all those pavers out there, you know, have either asphalt or concrete or something that's more durable. So I want to tell you, commissioners, that that we are looking at a hazard mitigation project now for Island View to make it more durable in the future. Because and the design company Wood Partners acknowledged that they were shocked about how much damage the park suffered by those storm forces. I mean, they had quite a bit of concrete that was undermined, and unfortunately, when concrete is undermined, the only way to fix it is to tear all the concrete out and rebuild the base, and it's much more expensive than if you had wood platforms where the storm surge would, you know, would scour out underneath it, but wouldn't affect the structure. In fact, the piers and the decking of the docks out there, they were fine. They sustained a storm surge. So, you know, a pile supported structures out there, the pile supported structures we had out there worked. The concrete, you know, sort of land-based structures didn't work. And so the more we can make pile supported, that's the direction we're headed. And I just want to tell you all that. It may be a while before we get, you know, it's much easier for FEMA to, and we just saw that in Alligator Point. It's much easier for FEMA to approve to rebuild something that was already there than it is to do a mitigation project where you got to figure all these other issues. So
FEMA gonna pay for this?
FEMA would pay for this, yes, and they are looking at options, but yes, they would pay for this. I will tell you, I also spoke to some of the people associated with rebuilding the park first. It's possible they would help us with our matching costs, because in the worst case scenario, and I'm just using a round number to make the math simple, if in fact it costs us $2 million to build the park back, and we don't get a waiver of our 12.5% match, then 12.5% of $2 million is $250,000. Well, we don't have $250,000 in your park and recreation fund as a match for anything.
That category 5, what they put it to, that don't make it come down?
Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you that the state of Florida has told us two things. One, it's not guaranteed it's going to come down. It's an option for someone to pay, and it might, based on what the legislature did, maybe they'll give us a cut. But we still need to apply for a waiver to see if that helps. And so I just haven't had time to get with the finance office and get all the documents they want to apply for the waiver. We got a waiver after Hermine, you know, a half of a waiver, I guess I'll say it that way. And so maybe they're going to do something. But we need to apply because it's not guaranteed that by going to a category 5, they're going to cut, you know, our local shares.
And we got a lot of cement out there.
You have a lot of cement out there. All those ramps that were leading down to the boardwalks, all that concrete. Yeah, I said yesterday at the site that I thought 80% of the park was destroyed.
The reason I asked, you know, the company that they doing the cement just like they used to do the Monster Shield. So instead of throwing it away, we can check and see how much a chipper costs, or can you rent a chipper?
Oh.
And you can bust that cement up and it.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the volume. I mean, we haven't got. It's all in place right now. We haven't removed anything, Mr. Chairman. I mean, that's certainly possible. You know, my feeling is that a contractor, because I mean, you're not talking, you know, tens of thousands of cubic yards of concrete, and I don't know whether they're just going to haul it off or whether it's worth chipping.
I mean, you know, we can use it for the road department and stuff.
It's possible. It's certainly possible. Yeah, we'll keep that in mind. Okay, that was 3 about where we stand on 3. Then on 4, board discussion of what funds, if any, and I have some updates on this, if any, the legislature approved for Hurricane Michael, and what funds, if any, were directed to Franklin County on, and these are the 4 items that we discussed about. A new EOC. The county had asked for $3 million to match the $1 million of consortium funds for a new EOC. There was not, well, there might have been a specific allocation for Franklin County for an EOC, but we don't know yet. There was a specific allocation for Franklin County under infrastructure repairs, $750,000, but it just says infrastructure repairs, it's something that Mr. Morone got from Chris Doohan late yesterday. So we do not yet know what infrastructure repair the Florida Senate knew about. I think personally it's the part of the EOC, but I don't know that, because I don't know whether infrastructure repairs the Senate would have known about. So we need to get verification on that infrastructure repair regarding that, because maybe we got some money, maybe we'll know shortly. So A, new EOC, we're not sure about. B, dune restoration. FDEP and the county had jointly estimated that $20 million worth of sand had been lost on the beach of St. George Island, Dog Island, Alligator Point because of Hurricane Michael. DEP received zero money for dune restoration, so no money for dune restoration. C, beach renourishment of Alligator Point Road. I talked about this briefly. If the county is going to provide additional protection of the road there through an engineered beach, then DEP would need to have enough funds from the legislature to provide a match. Under the previous application, Franklin County was eligible for a 50% match. My guess is now a beach renourishment project is going to cost around $10 million, so Franklin County would need to seek a match of $5 million. I have not heard from from DEP about how much money they got in beach renourishment or how many other people are ahead of us, so that's an unknown. And then D, in parentheses here, in addition, the county asked for some $175,000 to install a sprinkler system in the armory. The county tried to maximize our chances by asking Senator Mumford for a line item in the budget for a sprinkler system, and Mark Kieran submitted a grant request of the Division of Historical Resources for the same thing. I'm not aware of the outcome of either pass, so it may be the Historical Resources did fund our grant. I just don't know yet. So Mark's going to research that as soon as we get some answers out of Historic Preservation.
Well, you know, another thing, like Chris told us just,
That's right,
and what he
Sharon.
asked for is not,
Yeah, the governor
not, it haven't been signed.
right. The governor could line item veto it. That's
Yeah,
correct.
It haven't been signed, and it just, but that's the thing they asked for.
Yeah, and so that may be why we can't get any answers out of anybody, because they want to wait to see what the governor does.
Yeah.
But let me say, so I'll conclude on saying, it is my understanding that $25 million, I did get this verified, went to the state DEM for funding a variety of post-Michael issues. I'm not aware of whether any of those funds are reserved for Franklin County for a new EOC. So I'll stop there because I don't need the rest of it. I will say the last paragraph I'll read, the only county funding source available for any of our projects would be restore funds if the legislature doesn't fund anything. So if the legislature did not fund any of the projects that we want to build, the county might end up using all the currently available restore funds to do a reverse version of those projects I just mentioned. There is currently about $10 million of restore funds available to the county. If the legislature did not provide adequate funds for these projects and the board still wants to consider them, then I recommend we seek some guidance from Langton Consultants about other funding sources. Langton Consultants, your restore consultants. Langton was successful in working with Gulf County to find additional funds for their projects, specifically with their beach renourishment. So in a week or two, you know, after the governor signs it, we'll have an idea of what we got and what we need, and we can kind of go from there. Okay, that was that. Item 5. As the board may recall, Avcon and FDOT agreed to delay the bidding of the new airport access road because of Hurricane Michael. The county was going to open bids in November, and everyone agreed that all the road contractors were so busy that the bids would be unusually high and maybe not even having responses. So Avcon is now preparing a bid packet and advertising for bids for the airport road, which will loop around behind the T-hangars, provide access to the T-hangars without vehicles driving on the ramp where the planes are parked. The bids will be open at the June 4th meeting, so I remind Mr. Morone to put that on the agenda. Avcon will be here to open the bids, and then the board will turn over the bids to Avcon for review and recommendation. This road is something that's been in the works for years and years, so it's not a new project. And that's the end of my report, unless there's comments.
Anybody got anything, Mr. Pierce?
Oh, go ahead. I've got one more.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Alan, where have we got to with getting the bid prepared or ready to be bid to repair by the East Point bathroom of the fishing pier? Where the road was undermined, because that's something that needs to be bid out to be done,
It needs
correct?
to be bid out, and I think we're waiting for FEMA to approve because you've turned in, yeah, we're waiting for FEMA to, so Pam's office is submitting the documentation to get FEMA to approve the amount of funds. The engineering firm's done the estimate, and we've turned it into FEMA for approval.
Okay.
FEMA working kind of slow for the business, and I'm talking about the hard hit areas. We were hit, but they working slow.
Well-
To look like to me, getting,
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a consultant assisting us, so Pam's using the facility, you know, her personnel to do this without any outside consulting, which, you know, is something, it's a learning curve.
But they, I don't believe consultants gonna help, cause I'm hearing people crying on TV, but they got, I'm quite sure Panama got consultants.
Oh, yeah, most of them are using it, but, I don't know that it sped up things, I just don't know. I mean, it's an issue, and that's why, admittedly Pam wanted a consultant initially, but, we just couldn't seem to get it all together.
Yeah, but, that wouldn't help.
Commissioner Jones, I defer to you to ask Pam specifically where that one is in the pipeline, I just don't know, but I know the engineers turned in the numbers.
I know Panama got.
Let me go to one other thing, and I bring this up just really for the benefit of Mr. Schuler and the board, because I haven't talked about this. I haven't worked this out yet. So it's possible, when we start to build the permanent road on Alligator Point, that there's a jog that goes from Alligator Drive up to Tom Roberts. And now is the time to straighten that jog out. The property owners involved in the jog have not yet willingly signed up. So I just say that it's possible that the county may want to look at acquiring a corner of that property to straighten out that curve, because once we rebuild that road permanently, I want to make it as smooth as possible. It would not involve the condemnation of his house, but it would involve a sliver of property along the road. And I just say that.
You want us to make a motion to?
Not yet, because I don't have a configuration, but I just want to let the attorney know that, we may be looking at some form of, non-voluntary, acquisition.
Well, now is the time to start, if you're gonna.
I will say on the voluntary acquisitions, I've seen versions of, we've got a request for information, so we're moving, the state of Florida is moving through that grant application. We'll see how it turns out, and the FCMC is preparing a second round. So, because people are still interested in selling. Now, we still don't have the full right-of-way, and I'm not sure we ever will get it on a voluntary process, but we are gonna have a second round of acquisitions coming up sooner than later.
Well, the best thing to do is go and view what we got before we lose that, right?
Right, that's exactly what FCMC is doing, that's correct.
Well, we don't wanna lose this.
Are we still waiting on the Triumph money for East Point Channel?
We are waiting for the Corps of Engineers.
Okay,
The Corps of Engineers, well, you've asked, so I'll tell you the truth. The Corps of Engineers, we hope will be here next month on a site visit where we'll inform you all as best we can about when they're coming. They've already been out there once and done some post-Hurricane Michael surveying. I have spoken to the Corps of Engineers out of Mobile, which is handling the project, and they think that they will be here, say, in June, to confirm the volumes of materials. Commissioner Massey, I'll tell you that in my conversation with them, they said, look, now there's been a lot of material at the east end of the channel. If we have to blow through all that material at the east end of the channel, we might have to build a retention spill area inside the channel, on the inside of the breakwater. I said, that is not a good idea. We don't want to put spoil inside the breakwater. So it's possible that the east end, and I tell you this now, will not go all the way to the far extent that it could. It will go down to Barbers and get Barbers. I'm not sure it's going to go past Barbers, because if you know this, there's a huge amount of material out there. And that channel never, on the east end, it never really went anyway, but we need to go down to the one surviving seafood house you have down there and provide access to them. Whether it goes beyond them or not is very questionable. I don't think it will, because if it did, we'd have to build another spoil disposal area, and we don't want to go through that process. So I just.
Ain't that much, is any more houses past Bob?
No, there's no more houses, but the breakwater goes a little further, and so initially the idea was to dredge the channel at the length of the breakwater, and we're just not gonna be able to do that on the east end.
But
Well,
this will serve the purpose of most of your voters.
Oh, yeah.
Working people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And historically, nobody's really went out the east end
No,
anyway.
no.
Because it's so shallow, even if you get
Right.
past the breakwater, it's very shallow, no big boats are gonna go there anyway, so.
they hadn't been out since Bell Buchanan had his place.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
So the Corps still says, Commissioner Massey, that it's reasonable, and I forget now, Commissioner Jones, the date they told us that we could still be dredging by, what did they tell us?
I don't remember the date, you did tell me, but
I don't remember. But anyway, hopefully they'll be here with a site visit, and we will then confirm that we do not need to go beyond X point, and that's when they'll do some construction plans for us.
Okay.
Tell them to come on down.
Yeah,
Need 'em.
Commissioner, we're basically just waiting for them to come stick the flag in the ground, say we've started, you know, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be great.
There is, I mean, now we are gonna use our if necessary, we'll use our consortium money, Commissioner Massey, and the how we get money from the consortium to the Corps isn't quite straightened out. Because in a perfect world, I just have the consortium pay the Corps directly. You know, we agree that that's what they're gonna get, and boom, it just goes to the Corps. It may be, and most likely will be, that we have to get it to the county and then pay the Corps, which means we have sort of interlocal agreement that I was trying to avoid, but we may have to do it that way.
Let's try to do what we gotta do, get it on over with.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda will be Mr. Michael Marone, County Coordinator Report.
We already did items 1 and 2. Item 3, at your November 30th meeting, in an effort to solve the FireNet communications issue the county was experiencing, the board authorized payment up to $60,000 from reserve for contingencies for the purchase and installation of 2 new Harris multiband radio base stations, a multiband handheld radio, renewal of the FCC license, tower replacement, relocation, and other maintenance items. Thus far, Williams Communications requested a purchase order in the amount of $37,187.76 for some of this equipment and the license renewal, which leaves a balance of $22,812.24. There's been no final decision on the tower, as we're still looking at our options and costs. Currently, there are 3 outstanding invoices, which total $2,209.32 from Williams Communications for service calls from May 8th to the 23rd related to the FireNet communication system. These dates are prior to us the county getting involved, the county commission getting involved. Even though all 3 were billed to Franklin County United Firefighters Association, the current association president, Mr. George Port, informed me that the county, not the individual fire departments or the association, is responsible to pay for repairs or maintenance costs to the FireNet system. I informed Mr. Pruitt that all future maintenance calls regarding the FireNet communication system would be from Ms. Renee Brannon, which is the sheriff's dispatch manager, her designee, or myself. Mr. Pruitt supported that policy. With all that being said, is the board willing to pay the $209.32 for these 3 outstanding invoices from the remaining $22,000 that was set aside for the FireNet communication system repairs?
So moved.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Ain't nobody against it? Pass unanimous.
Item number 4, Commissioners, Mayor LaPaz, Carabel, informed me that the March 28th City of Carabel regular meeting, the City Commission approved a letter supporting a request from Appalachian Regional Planning Council. The request, which Commissioner Jones and Mr. Quentin Eastberg of ARPC have been working on for about 6 months, is for FDOT to build an interchange at Interstate 10 and State Road 65. This interchange would drive economic development for Franklin and Liberty counties and provide a natural disaster evacuation route. Mayor LaPaz will be reaching out to other departments, agencies, etc., for similar letters of support. The letter will go to FDOT's District 3 Secretary, Mr. Philip Gaynor. Board action to approve a letter of support for ARPC's request.
Pleasure to vote.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
moved.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say something, please.
Go ahead.
This actually is coming around and actually gonna be better than what I'd initially hoped for. Quentin and I started talking about this several months ago at ARPC, trying to gain traction to get it done. We initially talked about a build grant with the federal government, because they do set aside a certain amount of that for rural areas, and we definitely fit that criteria. But what had come up at the ARPC meeting the last time was some of the others on the board expressed the need that our county and the counties around us have for being able to get out of the county during emergencies. So I think that's gonna, Michael was not good, but there can be some good that come out of it if the right actions are taken. So this is one of them. So I will second Commissioner Bolt's.
Well, I think, Ricky, if you get time, I'd like to put one on 67 too, because we ain't gonna be able to get to 65 where it gets bad
Right.
to get out.
Mhm. Yeah. We'll look at that. Hopefully we can get one done and then that'll give us
Yeah.
some momentum for the other one.
Okay, I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Burke, second by Commissioner Jones. Any more discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All against it? Pass unanimous.
At your February 5th regular meeting, the board appointed Mr. Lon Wilkins to serve on the Planning and Zoning Board as an alternate for 3 months, which gives the candidate the opportunity to determine if they are truly interested in serving, and the county the opportunity to determine if they would be a good candidate. That 3-month period has passed. So Ms. Kelly is recommending that the board appoint Mr. Wilkins, who is also interested in continuing his service, to the science seat based on his education and experience, which I attached in an email. Board action to appoint Mr. Wilkins to the science seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody disapprove? Pass unanimous.
Based on those actions, there'll now be a vacant alternate seat on the Planning and Zoning Board. Mr. Ronald Schlitt, a local realtor, is interested in serving and would fill the vacant real estate seat. Mr. Schlitt would follow the same path as Mr. Wilkins and other recently appointed members, which is serving for 3 months as an alternate on the commission. After that 3-month period has passed, Mr. Schlitt would then be considered for the real estate seat. Board action to appoint Mr. Schlitt as an alternate to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Pass unanimous.
Commissioners, I thank you, but that lessens that opportunity of not having a quorum at these planning and zoning meetings, which are very important. Item 7, FAC sent you two notifications. The first is an email memorandum from FAC. Included in the memorandum is a link to FAC's annual report, which highlights all their accomplishments in 2018, specifically to Franklin County. I think you can filter that out. The second is a notice from informing counties of the qualifying period for election of officers. The notice includes eligibility and qualification requirements. If anyone is interested in running for a vacant officer seat, the required information is due by May 15th, 2019. Let me know. I think there's a vice president that's vacant right now, I do believe. So after you look it over, let me know. Item 8, attached to my report is the Army Corps of Engineers public notice regarding the artificial reef application that this board agreed to file on behalf of Mr. Grayson Shepherd and his group. There's contact information included in the notice if there are any questions or comments regarding the application. So they put it out there in case anybody has any issues, questions, so you can log in and do, or just if you send it to me, I'll on behalf of the board, I can make those inquiries. Okay? Moving on, item number 9, remind the board that the public hearing for the Serenity Seaside Resort LLC request for land use and rezoning change will be on Tuesday, May 21st. That's your next regular meeting at 1:30 right here in this room. So pack a lunch.
Michael, a comment
Sir?
if I might. At the last board meeting, I was suggesting that we might consider an individual not to teach us how to think or make decisions for this board, because this board is very skilled at making its own decisions. Would it be appropriate to consider a moderator at such what we expect to be such a large number of people to condense and organize the issues that we are hearing for which we will make decisions?
In the past, I'll say, Commissioner, most of the times what the board actually has done is confer with your county planner, who can give you the information. And you have all rights to also meet with the, if I'm wrong, Commissioner, Attorney Stearman, you can meet with the developer one-on-one and then
Sure.
meet with some of the people that might be against it.
Internally. I'm
Yes.
just thinking from a public standpoint, is this for the public good? Anticipating a large number of people in a passionate time, should we consider that option as well?
That's up to the board. I mean,
Just-
you guys have dealt with big issues before, you know, done a very good job in the past.
Yeah.
But that would be up to the board, that would be your fellow commissioners.
And I
making that
realize I'm
determination.
new on the learning curve here, so I just was wanting some thoughts from the board about that side.
I believe we can handle it.
Okay, good, just wanted to make sure.
Okay,
It you know, do what it don't.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, on Thursday, April 18th, the county formally opened Olin Buddy Ward Seafood Landing Park and Maritime Museum. Hope I got that right, with a ribbon cutting ceremony. I'd like to thank county staff, especially Ms. Whitney Barfield, for organizing this event, Mr. John Solomon, along with the TDC staff, for approving and providing and serving lunch, the Ward family, all the attendees and the speakers. The event was well attended, and all seemed pleased with the outcome of that project. Went pretty well. I think you guys did, that was a
Very
good
good
thing.
day.
A couple more. Tomorrow, I meet with the Second Circuit admin staff and the court marshal to review security updates that have been put in place since the active shooter exercise. There's been a lot of work done behind the scenes, and there is more to be done to increase security and safety in all three buildings. If there are any security issues you would like addressed tomorrow, let me know, which is namely what Mr. Kelly asked for about the doors. That will definitely be discussed tomorrow. That's number one on my thing. I have one more thing I was not able to put, that Mark asked me to and I forgot. So, there's a letter of support. The city of Appalachia, or someone in the city, would like to do a survey in the squares of Apalachicola, which includes Washington Square. Is that where the hospital is, sir?
Yes.
Washington Square. It's just a survey that they're doing. Mark doesn't think it's a bad idea. Actually, he says what we could do is send a letter of support, but with our letter, we're asking for a free copy of the survey for Washington Square.
What is the survey?
It's a boundary survey. It's
Boundary
not a
survey.
historical, so it's a boundary survey, is what it was.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead.
maybe before the board, or if you want to make the decision contingent, but the county has already performed a boundary survey of the property that you own as part of the application process for the USDA loan that is authorized for the construction of the new hospital. So perhaps obtain a copy of that, or at least make these people who are requesting to perform a boundary survey aware that we already have a boundary survey.
Okay.
I mean, we can't necessarily stop anyone from surveying public property. My concern is I would not like us to have two different surveys saying two different things if possible, because then we have to go through a resolution process if there's a conflict. But
And I'm sorry, sir, what they were asking for is letter of support because they're trying to get a $10,000 grant to do all the squares in the city. I didn't say that, I do
wow,
apologize.
that's cheap. Okay.
Yeah, 10,000 for all the squares.
What the
Yeah,
birth,
Well, some of the squares, a couple of squares have already been done. They've already done two of this. They've been to historic president, I know a little more than I need to. They've, edit that out, please. Some of the squares were done with a previous historic preservation grant, and so this is sort of a follow-up. And so I think this $10,000 maybe just for Washington Square, maybe one of the other ones. And they're doing a boundary square, the whole square, not just the property the county owns, but there, as you know, there are two other property owners.
Out parcels,
in
that's
that
correct.
square. So they're gonna do the whole square.
Okay.
To my knowledge, they're just doing the corner.
So do you see any reason not to send a letter of support?
No, I don't see any reason
Okay.
not to send a letter of support.
pleasure of the board.
Well, they want a letter of support?
Just for the application, for the 10,000.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
That's it for me, Commissioners, unless you have something for me.
No, I don't know. No. Anybody got anything else for?
Did you want us to remind you about some shirts that you wanted us to get?
Next month is your conference, and this is about the time where we usually order you guys a shirt, so you have a shirt that's down at the conference. How, I can't order it without your board, believe it or not, without board approval.
So moved.
Second.
Second. What you add in there, just have, why we have to come back every year, just put it in there, continuous, that it have me
Annually,
automatic.
you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, annually.
I'll amend my motion.
I'm in my second.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Commissioner, for reminding me.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That pass unanimous.
Just one other thing, Michael. I was reminded by Chairman Lockley as we were standing at the Buddy Ward dedication and we're looking at that boat ramp and how well it was designed and how well it was constructed. I began to think about hearing from several constituents and others around the county that many of the boat ramps in our county are in disrepair. And I'm seeing photographs of Surf Road, Sun and Surf Road there at Alligator Point, that seaward of that boat ramp, there is an accumulation of sediment and everything that makes access very difficult. Concrete is broken in some of the distal ends of the boat ramp. And I'm remembering also what you said, Chairman Lockley, about the need for an option of a hitching post, if you will, right
Yeah.
there at the boat ramps, to prevent float away of boats. And thinking of all that, should we have a look at our whole boat ramp system in the county and what plans we might have to mitigate those issues? Could you look into that for us
Yes.
and maybe give us just a survey of where we are?
I will, I'll have someone, so basically you're asking me for a survey of the status of all the.
Status of the boat ramps
and then-
themselves and what we can do to mitigate that,
Let me jump
because
to two
many of them are
things.
dysfunctional.
So, because we've been down, yeah, we need to, at some point, we've been down this road before, and this is the issue. The FWC has a boating improvement trust fund, which we apply for boating grants.
I heard.
We have been down, I say been down, I sound like a broken record. So the issue is with the FWC is that the boat ramp location has to have enough water in it that you can launch a boat without dredging, all right? And there's been a major problem at the east end of the county finding those locations. One reason a boat ramp was built at the Ocklawahamie Bridge was because there was deep water there. We tried everywhere already on Alligator Point looking for a satisfactory boat ramp. The boat ramp at Sun and Sand is not a boat ramp, it's a street end. It would not ever get an FWC grant for two reasons. One, there's no parking. FWC
Yep.
wants to make sure when you're building a boat ramp, you have adequate parking. There's no parking there. It's a residential street end. Number two, it's going to the aquatic reserve. Alligator Point Aquatic Reserve. We'll never get a permit to dredge in there to make it deep enough. So I don't think, I say this with sadness, because it's being heavily used, but you're never gonna get money to improve that thing because it's in an aquatic reserve and it's a street end without adequate parking. The place for people to use that we might be able to get benefit is over there at Leonard's Landing. Now, people don't wanna use Leonard's Landing for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's too shallow, but that at least is not as jammed in a residential area.
Yeah,
I mean, I won't say
right.
we can't go back and revisit Sun and Sand, maybe the rules have changed, but Sun and Sand is a problem, because it's a street end, it was never built as a boat ramp, it's just a street end.
I see.
Well, can you put it on one of them BP projects?
I don't think it's gonna make any difference. I think it's being a street end, there's no parking there. I think that's gonna be a problem to get anybody to issue us a permit to make that an improvement. And I think you may generate a huge neighborhood battle if you start making that a boat ramp with parking all in the neighborhood.
I see.
Then they issue all these aquaculture leases down
It's
there.
already a problem, right?
With no access to none of that stuff, which compounds the problem.
Okay. And I didn't know that Sun and
my-
Surf
my-
was a street end. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's just a street end, that's what it is. My solution is something that we've looked at and never got anywhere, is, and admittedly, if we had a safe road, it wouldn't be that big of an issue, is get access to the old FSU Marine Lab on Alligator Point, which is public land owned by the governor and cabinet, and get that opened up for the public. It already has a boat ramp, it has 5 acres of land that could be used for access and parking. It's sitting there with a gate locked up, it's public property, and it's been closed for 25 years.
That's the old Phipps area?
Not the Phipps area, but the FSU Marine Lab on Alligator Point, it's around there by Carnival Street.
I see. Oh.
And it's the location that we should be demanding the state of Florida open as a public, it's public property, waterfront public property with a gate across it.
Okay.
And that's where the boat ramp needs to be.
I'll help you start that one.
It used to be owned by FSU, and I complained to FSU so much, they finally transferred the land back to the governor and cabinet.
Oh, is that?
No good deed goes
Yeah,
unpunished.
yeah, that's what my.
Well, let's look, we'll work on that one.
And at some point, we can send a letter of support, a letter requesting it, okay.
Okay,
But
so,
I'll still follow through with what you asked.
okay, that's good, thank you.
Yeah, tell them we need all the boat routes just like a highway. And this a seafood town, I mean,
Yeah.
we surrounded by water, so you need access to the water much
Yeah.
as we can get it around in this area. because
Yeah.
Sure.
That would never, we just need it. Got all this water around us, you need to get in it.
I mean, we are going through the process of I think Michael already mentioned this, I apologize for not paying attention, is that the FSU, not the FSU, the Indian Creek boat ramp is the next on the list to get improved. And so that.
Old Ferry Dock.
Old Ferry Dock,
Indian Creek.
Old Ferry Dock. Yeah, so we are making improvements at boat ramps that we know FWC is gonna support.
But we wanna keep them up. Like you said, I mean, they need keeping up.
I'm through.
Back to-
Mr. Chairman, just for the board's information, you have already authorized the conveyance of a small parcel of land from the county to Mr. Johnny Byrd, conditioned on the city of Apalachicola first deeding the property back to the county. And I just wanted you to know that I have in my possession from Mr. Byrd a deed from the city of Apalachicola back to the county for that 15-foot strip. So I'm then now going to go through the process of transferring that 15-foot strip from the county to Mr. Byrd for the $2,500 price that the property appraiser has said the property is worth. So no action needed from the board. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that I was doing that.
Okay.
Otherwise, any questions for the attorney?
Anybody got anything for Mr. Shoes? All right,
Thank you.
next on the agenda, commissioner comment. Any commissioner comment?